y'all. Let's talk about Jaliek Boyd. He was born on August the 2nd of 1995 in an apartment in Albany, New York. His birth mother was struggling with addiction and had consumed alcohol during her pregnancy. So Jaliek was born addicted to cocaine and with fetal alcohol syndrome, meaning he was exposed to addictive substances that would alter his development. He was put into foster care 2 days later. Jaliek is a very handsome young man with a smile that will light up a room. The brightest and greenest eyes I have ever seen. He has curly brown hair with blonde highlights. Jaliek is biracial and very charming young man. He would spend the first 9 years of his life going from foster home to foster home. I believe before he was adopted, there was actually 6 foster homes. Between the foster homes, he would stay at Parson Child and Family Center. I've read reports stating that Jaliek was sexually abused early in his life, struggled with behavioral issues. He showed signs of reactivement disorder. This could be from being in foster care. Separation was hard for him. He would cry for people he had just met. He also had a slight speech impediment. The letter R he would pronounce as a W. The former foster family of Jaliek's describes him as intelligent but troubled child. They had cared for him for 4 years and confirmed that he had violent outbursts. They had backed out of plans to adopt him after he attacked their daughter. But can we talk about this for a minute? I mean, if a child is put from foster home to foster home, he didn't bond with anyone. That's what the attachment disorder is. I mean, what do we expect? Jaliek was supposed to have special care in these foster homes by parents who were trained to look after Jaliek. Jaliek was supposed to be in therapeutic foster homes. From the age of 4 to 7, he was with another foster family who also wanted to adopt him. But his attachment disorder was just too difficult to handle. At this point, Jaliek's birth mother had gotten her life together, and she tried to get her son back. She was no longer struggling with addiction, and she was doing everything that she should to get her son back. But of course, she was denied that opportunity. Jaliek was placed with Stephen Kerr and Jocelyn McDonald. This couple had 3 biological children and a daughter through foster care who also had special needs. Family would adopt Jaliek and his sister a year later. During the process for the adoption, they lived in Salem in New York. After the adoption was finalized, Jocelyn and Stephen, along with their 5 kids, moved to a 2-bedroom cottage outside of Greenwich in Washington County. This cottage was totally off-grid. No plumbing, no electricity, just a generator that would run a couple hours a day. All 7 family members slept in one room together, except for their adopted daughter, who had a small space in the corner, and you would have to climb a ladder to get there. There was an outhouse on the property for family members for everyone but Jaliek. Jaliek had been punished and was not allowed to use the outhouse. Some people believe this family made this move just so that social workers could not come and do a checkup on this family. This cottage was remote. This couple was also paid to foster these children. Don't forget that. The state pays very well to foster kids, and sometimes people do it only for the money. Jaliek was in a homeschool program while they paid good money for their biological son to attend a private school. Jaliek's adoptive maternal grandmother, Barbara Reilly, says that Jaliek did take karate classes and he went to music camp 2 summers in a row. He loved music. He loved to spend time with Barbara, and she loved to spend time with him. To this day, August the 6th of 2023, Barbara is still searching and fighting for Jaliek. Barbara says that her and Jaliek would spend time together playing video games. He liked to do that. Jaliek had an outburst at his homeschool group to a younger child who was kind of picking at Jaliek. I believe this child was really young, like maybe 5 years old. And they say that Jaliek had an outburst and that it was sexually explicit. Jaliek was in need of medical intervention and therapy, and maybe even medication. His adoptive family was not providing any of this to Jaliek. He was not going to therapy. He was not getting anything he needed to thrive in life. Let's talk a little bit about therapeutic foster homes, meaning the child would have extra physical, psychological, and emotional needs. The child would be placed with a foster parent or parents specifically trained to deal with their needs. Now let's talk a little bit about fetal alcohol syndrome. It says it causes speech, language therapy, occupational therapy, sometimes physical therapy classes that teach kids social skills, counseling with mental health professionals. Medication may also be needed. Jaliek was not receiving any of these things from his adoptive family. Instead, he was living off the grid with no plumbing, no electricity, and not even having access to the family outhouse. These children would have to get up in the mornings and draw water from a nearby well. Jocelyn and Stephen were struggling to deal with Jaliek's behavior. After this outburst at his homeschool group, they ended up calling a hotline to Child Services, and this call was made on October 23rd of 2007 to try and reverse the adoption, stating that Jaliek was unmanageable and they no longer wanted him in their home. They were afraid for their other children. This hotline number suggested respite care to this family, and it was arranged that a former foster family would take Jaliek for 6 days. Initially, they wanted this foster family to take Jaliek for 2 weeks, but this family already had plans that they could not cancel. So they would take Jaliek for 6 days, returning for 1 day, and then take him back for a few more days, and then returning back home, his adoptive family. So respite care means temporary institutional care of a sick, elderly, or disabled person, providing relief for their usual caregiver. This couple's name was Elaine and Tom Pearson. They are the ones who provided respite care to Jaliek. Jaliek's adoptive parents also changed his name to Jaliek Rainwalker. Stephen and Jocelyn Kerr adopted Jaliek in 2003. The instability in Jaliek's life was extremely detrimental to Jaliek's mental health, and he was eventually diagnosed with reactive attachment disorder, also known as RAD, which made it exceptionally difficult for him to form attachments to others, especially caregivers. RAD can also result in explosive outbursts and behavioral issues. When a foster child like Rainwalker suffers from RAD, it can be difficult to find a permanent placement due to the upsetting and sometimes violent outbursts. So plans were made for Jaliek to go in this respite care. Tom and Elaine Pearson would get Jaliek on October 27th of 2007. They say he was a joy to have around. He was very respectful. He helped with chores. And on October 28th, Jaliek and Elaine went to a Halloween-themed fair. She says Jaliek was so happy and he loved it. Jaliek spent a lot of time reading there. He loved to read and had been reading Harry Potter. Tom says he let Jaliek ride up front and even let him choose the music in the vehicle. He said Jaliek would just be pushing and turning buttons. He said it was different to him. He had never done this with Jaliek before. Even though Jaliek had not been going to the homeschool program, he was still given work to do while he was away in respite care. And one thing he was to do was to write a letter and apologize to the homeschool group. He also talked about his life with Stephen and Jocelyn. He said that they were only allowed to have meat once a week, and they were only allowed to bathe once every 2 weeks. He stated that Stephen would scream and throw things at him a lot. On November 1st of 2007, Jaliek was to go back to Stephen and Jocelyn. Stephen drove from Washington County to Alamont, but Stephen did not take Jaliek back home. Instead, he took Jaliek to Greenwich, New York. Stephen's parents had a home there, and there was no one at the home at the time. It was vacant. So this is where they would stay. They were seen eating at the Red Robin, sitting in a booth together. It was reported that Jaliek looked uncomfortable and did not touch his food, and that Stephen did most of the talking. After eating, they went to Stephen's parents' home. He told Jaliek to go to bed. He stayed up and watched a movie. The next morning, at about 7 a.m., on November the 2nd of 2007. Stephen goes to Jaliek's room and thinks he's still asleep. So he leaves him there and just lets him sleep a little bit longer. And when Stephen returns to wake Jaliek a little bit later, he finds that Jaliek is not there. He says that Jaliek had took pillows and placed them like it was a person in the bed. He goes downstairs and he finds a letter or a large piece of paper that just says Albany. Stephen says he's found a note that Jaliek has also wrote, and it says, "Dear everybody, I'm sorry for everything. I won't bother you anymore. Goodbye, Jaliek." He took this to mean Jaliek had run away, possibly to Albany, where his brother was at. Stephen went ahead and took a shower and went to town before calling and reporting Jaliek missing. When he did return, about an hour later, he finally called 911 to report that Jaliek had ran away. Stephen and Jocelyn both say that maybe Jaliek had joined a gang. They also state that he was suicidal and even homicidal. And let's remember, these are the parents that were not getting him any help. And where's the caseworker to make sure he was getting the help he deserved? As a runaway, we all know there is no Amber Alert issued for these children. And even with that, authorities still searched all kinds of places that weekend, nonstop, looking for Jaliek. They followed up on tips and leads to find this child. Search parties and flyers were posted all around town. Jaliek's disappearance, the word of it spread quickly. 12-year-old Jaliek Rainwalker, wearing blue jeans, a t-shirt with a dragon, black sneakers, and a yellow fleece pullover sweater. Everyone believed Jaliek had ran away. Jocelyn and Stephen had offered to do a polygraph, but when authorities come and asked them to do it, Stephen refused. And Jocelyn did take one, and it come back inconclusive. Several agencies got involved in the search, even the FBI. It was freezing temperatures. On November 13th, several canine dogs were taken out to search a country club area. Police come out and tell the public Stephen is not cooperating and that he had walked out of the police department and refused to talk unless he had a lawyer present. A few days later, police announced they are issuing subpoenas for anyone who had interviewed Stephen and Jocelyn. There had been a vigil that was held for Jaliek, and Stephen actually spoke about Jaliek at this vigil. He says he believes his son is still alive. He said police looking into him was standard procedure. On November 21st, authorities searched around a campsite in Vermont, but like all other searches, nothing was found. December the 6th of 2007, the FBI decides to subpoena Stephen's phone records, hoping to confirm Stephen's alibi. Stephen and Jocelyn were not happy and put out a statement. In December, another search was done for Jaliek, but again, nothing was found. The Adam Group and Jaliek's foster families and his maternal grandparents form a task force searching for Jaliek. They planned fundraisers, they opened up a tip line, they held educational events about adoption and fostering. Elaine Pearson comes forward and tells authorities Jaliek had written that letter to his homeschool group to apologize, and it was actually homework assigned to him from Stephen, not a letter of goodbye. After this, police really began to think foul play. A second vigil was held for Jaliek, but Stephen and Jocelyn did not attend. Stephen was seen in the community taking down the flyers. People say these parents did not ever do any searches for Jaliek. They did put up a $25,000 reward for any information leading to Jaliek, but they also stated that the reward money would go down $5,000 for every month Jaliek was not found. Jaliek's grandmother Barbara and the task force come forward and tell the public that they believe Jaliek is no longer alive. And she says 3 years ago, Stephen had punished Jaliek by holding his head underwater. Let's talk about this for a moment. This child was struggling to fit in. He was struggling with his behavior, and basically, he just felt unloved. And he was being abused mentally and physically, according to his maternal adopted grandmother. And the Parson family that had Jaliek for respite care says it seems as if he was singled out and treated differently in the family, Stephen and Jocelyn. My heart hurts for Jaliek and what he has been through, and that he has never been shown true love. Can we talk about this for just a minute and child abuse? Do you know that most children who are abused sexually, physically, they act out in anger? Can we talk about just the small things, like even letting a child ride in the front seat of the vehicle? I know you think that's probably nothing big, but to children, they do notice these things. Every child deserves to be loved, happy, and healthy. Everyone in Jaliek's life has failed this child for not reporting the abuse and in so many other ways. Now that Barbara has spoken out about Jaliek and the abuse, she no longer has contact with her daughter Jocelyn or her other grandchildren. And on January 14th of 2008, Stephen is named officially a person of interest. On November 1st and November 2nd, a gold minivan is seen on surveillance footage, a Chrysler minivan matching the description of Stephen's car at 12:16 a.m., but police cannot be sure it was his car or that he was driving it. If you recall, he states no one left the home again until November the 2nd. On January 23rd of 2008, an anonymous letter comes into the police that says, Jaliek is still alive. The letter states Jaliek is still alive, needed a foot soldier for this war on drugs. Picked him up on Route 40, Post 30. He's okay. No fake. He says, ask his mama and papa. Who are the Macaroni family? My cat named Diamond. Why does Frantic yell? Don't try to look. We are not there. Authorities and the media are baffled by this letter. Authorities asked Stephen and Jocelyn to come into the police station so they can try and make some sense of the letter. But when they see the media there, they leave. So after this, the Jaliek Task Force makes a public statement asking for anyone who sent this letter, please do a follow-up, and gave 3 questions for them to answer. Questions that Jaliek would only have the answer to. The first question, what did Jaliek do on Halloween night? The second question, who won the foosball tournament at the Pearsons? The third question, what did Jaliek and Bernie do in the afternoon of the day we were all together? Then they provided an email for the person to respond to, hoping to get a response. In February, Stephen and Jocelyn's vacant home was searched, and authorities took several items, including a family computer. The cell phone data comes back, and it shows that Stephen was not truthful. He lied about the route he had taken to his parents' home. He said at 8:15 p.m. he was on Route 40, Melrose, New York, but according to his data, 25 miles south in South Troy. During this time, Stephen and Jocelyn pack up and move across state lines to Vermont. Barbara, Jaliek's grandmother, goes to the home and goes inside, hoping to find some kind of clue about what happened to Jaliek. And sure enough, she finds his yellow fleece pullover that he was supposed to be wearing when he disappeared. So let me tell you a little bit about the yellow pullover. Jaliek was at school and a teacher saw him in like 29-degree weather outside with no jacket on. She tells him, go inside and get a jacket. It is freezing out here. He tells her, I do not have a jacket to get. He also says, why are y'all so concerned about what I wear when I'm living in a tent? This concerns the teacher. He tells her they are staying in a tent. It is freezing cold on this day. I believe she stated it was 29 degrees. He tells her they are doing renovations on their home. She tells him, go inside, go to the nurse, and get a jacket. And this is where the yellow fleece pullover comes from. So let's talk about this. Why did this child not have on a jacket? Why did no one see that he didn't have on a jacket? All the foster homes he had been in and the child home he had been in and out of, no one made sure that Jaliek had a jacket. The state pays these people to take care of this child. Jaliek was only 12 years old when he vanished without a trace. And when Barbara went into that vacant house to look for any evidence and found that yellow pullover sweater, she was arrested. Her charges would later be downgraded a bit, but she still went to jail. Barbara also went to court during some time period and tried to get custody of Jaliek, so this way they wouldn't have to fight tooth and nail to get information about Jaliek, meaning his health records, dental records, doctor visits. But of course, it was denied. In 2010, another search was done of a body of water. Scuba divers, everyone, authorities were there. But again, nothing was found of Jaliek. Y'all remember the minivan I told you was spotted on surveillance footage at 12:16 in the morning? I want you to know it was located by the Hoover River. On December the 12th of 2012, an announcement was made that Jaliek's case was no longer considered a missing person case. It was now considered a probable homicide. In 2014, police searched the home he was last seen in of Stephen's parents' home, but still nothing was found. The state police and the FBI continue to follow up on any leads and tips that come in. On June of 2022, a large wooded preserve at the Southfield Dodger Field was done. They searched with cadaver dogs for about 6 hours and on foot. No one knows the conclusion of this search. It has not been released to the public. In 2012, Jaliek's case was classified as presumed homicide, but law enforcement agencies, local, state, and federal, have not offered any evidence that Jaliek is dead. Jaliek Rainwalker's vanishing from a rural village in Washington County has been a high-profile case and has received a lot of attention. And still, to this day, August the 7th of 2023, no one knows where Jaliek Rainwalker is. On November the 2nd of 2023, it will be 16 years that Jaliek Rainwalker has been missing. The Jaliek Task Force is pledging to keep the reward for any information leading to Jaliek's whereabouts at $25,000. Jaliek Rainwalker was 12 years old when he vanished. On August the 2nd of 2023, he just turned 28 years old. No one has ever been charged in Jaliek's disappearance. No human remains have ever been found of Jaliek Rainwalker. Jaliek Rainwalker is biracial. He has green eyes. He had short brown hair with blonde highlight. He was last seen wearing a gray t-shirt with a dragon on it, blue jeans, black high-top sneakers. If you have any information on Jaliek Rainwalker's case, please call Cambridge Greenwich Police Department at 518-692-6332 or the FBI at 518-465-7551. Y'all stay safe out there and thank you for listening.